Now we are moving to the second session of the day one workshop. So now I welcome Ms. Mary Gladys Das, Assistant Professor, to introduce the guest speaker of the second session, Professor Ismat Zareen.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening to all. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce Dr. Ismat Zareen. Dr. Ismat Zareen is an academician, researcher, and international speaker in the field of applied linguistics, sociolinguistics, ELT, and education. She holds an honorary doctorate in peace and development for her contribution in the development knowledge and humanitarian issues from the International Diplomatic Organization for Development and Peace, and UN affiliated organization. She is the Deputy National Director of International Society of Teachers, Researchers in Bangladesh. She is also the country ambassador of Charles Wallace Research Society for Innovation and Research. She is a member of Cambridge Open Co-Creation Panel, Cambridge Academic Section, Cambridge University Press. She is also an editorial board member and peer reviewer in a number of Scopus indexed international academic journals published from USA, UK, and India. At present, she is working in University of Asia Pacific, Dhaka, Bangladesh in the Department of English. Apart from that, she is involved with various non-profit organizations as an advisor. Once again, we are very honored and privileged to have you as a guest, ma'am. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Ms. Claria Das. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope I'm properly audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am, you're
yes.
audible.
Okay. So let me just first share my screen and then I'll start, of course. So I really feel honored to be here. I mean, invited as a guest speaker at this virtual workshop on enhancing language and communication. And I really believe that this is a topic which requires a lot of discussion. So my topic for today is assimilating global communicative competence in second language teaching and learning. Um, so okay. Are the slides available? I mean, can you see the slides I'm sharing?
No, ma'am.
Can you see the slide? I'm sharing the slides.
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for confirming. All right. So the first thing that I would like to start with is that, of course, we are in a very different world if we compare like the last 50 years or even more, because I think last 3 years and more have been very difficult for all of us. And so it's been a challenge for all of us around the world. And of course, the world requires um, of course, us to be changed as well. I mean, if we can't change ourselves, requirement of the changed world will not be sufficed. So before the pandemic, of course, we were talking about a global village, and of course, the world was very much interconnected as it is. But then again, even after the pandemic, I think we are more connected, much more connected than before, because during the pandemic, we could realize that we can be closer. We can be closer even virtually in different platforms from different perspectives. We can be present and be aside with each other. And that is more important to be all together and create the world. So if we think from that perspective, of course, second language teaching and learning is a concern for all of us, especially, of course, if we think about this world, the changed world nowadays. Um, we need much more attention to the second language teaching and learning. And when it comes to second language teaching and learning, I mean, especially if we talk about English as a second language teaching and learning, in which I'm going to focus much more, um, we all need this competence, and we need to look into the second language teaching and learning from a different perspective in this changed world, and that's what I would like to focus more on. So where are we now? I mean, what are we expecting for ourselves, and of course, for the future graduates, and of course the future employees, and even like the future employers? How are we thinking now? The global economy has changed and undergone through a must change in the last 3 years and more. And there has been inflation, of course. There has been a lot of difficulties because, of course, the opportunities for work have been squeezed for so many, so much time. And because of course, due to the pandemic, our perspectives changed, and we could realize that we need to think more about how we can prosper and how we can move ahead with our economic perspectives, our work experiences, and of course our workplaces and our working environment. I mean everything. So the global economy has changed due to the pandemic, of course, and the economy. I mean, of course, if we talk about the global economy, we are not in a very good position now, and we are hoping. What we are really hoping is that we are hoping to move ahead with this drastic, difficult situation to a better position. And for that reason, we need to have, I mean, we need graduates who will be alternatively competent. And we need to have graduates who will be overly equipped with their skills. So this is what I'm going to focus on, I mean, from this perspective, about how are we going to groom our future graduates who are going to be landing to the workplace, and how they're going to cope up with the changed world. So if we think about the post-COVID world, of course, we are in a more complex situation. We are moving ahead with much more diversified work circumstances, and of course interconnectivity has become crucial, even in comparison to the previous years. So interconnectivity is connected to the second language teaching and learning, of course. I mean, when we talk about interconnectivity language, the previous speaker was talking about language barriers and of course cultural barriers and all. So of course interconnectivity, of course, is about mindset, and it's also about, of course, um, language. So when it comes to language, of course, when we need to be interconnected, breaking all the kinds of barriers in connection to culture, in connection to place, and in connection to circumstances and perspectives. Of course, language is the most important link which can actually connect us in a very short while. So, of course, when we talk about second language teaching and learning, and when it comes to English as a second language, we need to innovate better ideas where we can actually incorporate certain other skills, which will enable our learners to move ahead with proper communicative competence. So, moving ahead, so I'd like to look into this situation from this perspective. So, what is our changing world all about? And I would like to introduce this concept of global communicative competence, or rather, we can also call it global competence in brief. So, is this, I mean, of course, is this situation, do we need a different approach to teaching second language in the classroom? We need to think more. And can we incorporate this global communicative competence? This is going to be my workshop all about, and how we can do this. I will also talk about it, and maybe we can go beyond the classroom while while incorporating global communicative competence in the teaching and learning process of second language, and especially English as a second language. So if we think about, I mean, before going into the concept to teaching and learning, of course, I'd like to shed a little bit of light to the global economy. And I believe that the global economy, of course, as I just started with that concept, global economy is much more tied now to international trade. And if we look into the data, very recent data, we know that 1 in 5 jobs at present in the job market are connected to international trade, and these can be, these jobs can be performed even sitting at home in most cases. I mean, at least 1 in 5 jobs. So we need alternative skills, and we need to be more competent. And we have, like, when we think about the customers and employees, as well as, like, of course, the employers, if we think from the employer's perspective, we have this globalization thing going on from a very deep rooted thought. The thought is that, of course, uh, we actually nowadays we don't think about, or we don't want to think about the boundaries in any form. We want to have a global audience, and we have global customers who actually don't want any kind of barriers coming in the way of their work, or in the way of their demands to be fulfilled. And the employees, of course, need to cater to those demands. So from that perspective, of course, we need to think more about, when we are teaching learners English as a second language, we need to think about uh, what we can give in the learners. So so as I just was mentioning, that we are now in a much more complex, interconnected, and increasingly we are becoming more borderless in terms of our work culture, and of course in terms of our workplaces. And of course, since we have online activities, much more different kinds of platforms are there. I mean, of course, you can see what we are doing right now. We are actually doing a virtual workshop, which was not that much accessible. Even if we think about 10 years back, this was not the case. But now we can actually, we are borderless. I'm from Bangladesh. I am like, of course, giving a workshop to you all, where you are maybe from different parts of the world, and of course, maybe not very near me. So it doesn't matter nowadays. I mean, how we are getting connected. The only concern is that, are we getting connected properly? Are we getting the work done properly? So are we really interconnected? So we are interconnected through different platforms in the online, if we think from the online perspective and all. So if we think about the future world, I mean, if we think about the world, I mean, after a few years from now, we will be more globalized, and of course, we will be more localized even, where global and local will come together, and they will be moving on, side by side. And so the consequences of COVID has actually, not only negative, but there have been some kind of, I would say, some positive outcomes as well, because we could realize how strong we are, how strongly we can get connected, even if we are apart from each other, even if we are in isolation even. So there has been, of course, difficulties in this world. There will be some more difficulties in the future as well, maybe, but we hope not. However, wars, terrorism, refugees, and xenophobia, all these, I mean, world issues prevailing in the different parts of the world, these are there, and these maybe will be there all the time. And then there are more, so there are difficult conditions like climate change, a very critical condition we are in, if we think about the climate change. And then, of course, the rising sea levels, and there are natural disasters, as we can actually speculate from I mean, looking at the data, and of course the information coming from the scientists. Of course, we know that we're going to have much more difficulties in the upcoming days, or in the upcoming years to come. So the only concern now is that whatever difficulties, I mean, what COVID actually has taught us, is that whatever situation we are in, we can pass those situations, and we can cope up with that, given that we are more connected, given that we are more borderless, given that we are more concerned about our interconnectedness. So from that perspective, moving ahead, I would like to talk about this new vision that I would like to introduce to you, which is global communicative competence. So is this a new vision that we can think about in education, Since I'm just focusing on teaching and learning second language, of course, I will focus on this side, but of course, there are more that we can do about it. I mean, of course, there are much more room to research in this a particular area. I mean, global communicative competence. But I will just connect it to uh, how we can connect global communicative competence with the teaching and learning of second language. Um, So, what do the students of today think? And as you can see, the this particular data is taken from worldsavvy.org, and this data shows the percentage of high school graduates and how what they believe and what they think. So the student, this is a data, survey which was conducted on 18 to 24, aged 18 to 24 teenager, graduates, and how they think and what is their vision about education. So 80% of the world's graduates now, they think that, high school graduates, they think that jobs are becoming much global in nature, which needs to be attended. And 12% among them, they think that they received instruction to help them to understand the roots of global issues. However, um, among these graduates, 60%, a very big number, they think that it would be better for them if they would be better informed about the world cultures, and they needed much more stronger understanding of the world culture in prevailing in the different areas of the world, and so that they could connect to the world much more. So as you can see, this percentage is very high, who among the graduates who are actually aware now of the fact, when of course they are now working, and they feel that they needed much more ideas, and of course stronger understanding and connectedness to the world cultures, and given in-depth information and of course training about it. So from that perspective, what researchers nowadays are believing is that global communicative competence, it can be a big solution, or maybe a better solution to cope up with this situation and this vast emptiness among the graduates. So when we are teaching, and when we're teaching second language, English as a second language, to our learners, we need to, I think we need to fill in this gap. We can always fill in this gap if we can incorporate global communicative competence with our teaching and learning process. So, of course, before moving on, of course, I would like to talk about what is global communicative competence and how we can think about this concept. So, what is global competence? The knowledge, skills, and dispositions which are necessary to navigate and succeed in today's interconnected world. So, as you can see, this is not only about knowledge, this is about the knowledge alongside the skills and dispositions. So, this is a combination of three things altogether, which will make our graduates be successful in today's interconnected world, and of course much more interconnected in future. And so what do the globally competent individuals, what do they have, what kind of skills do they have, or what kind of knowledge do they have? So the first thing is very important, is that we need to we need to build that mindset among the learners that they should be lifelong learners. So because a globally competent learner is a lifelong learner, a globally competent learner has an appreciation for cultural differences. Now, the cultural differences, of course, it is a reality. I mean, we cannot ignore this fact. We cannot ignore the fact that we come from different cultures. But the problem is that in most cases, what we think that if a graduate doesn't have the proper orientation, of differentiations in cultures. And if they cannot appreciate, they cannot be global citizens. So, I mean, a globally competent learner who has, of course, second language skills, also can appreciate different cultural differences. Whether a person comes from Amazon, or whether a person comes from, South Asia, or whether a person comes from, um, Europe or any other part of the world, doesn't matter. They should know how to appreciate the cultural differences among different individuals. So how to appreciate, how to look at other cultures very positively, and accepting that reality that that the world has a varied culture. And then I hope I'm properly audible and everything is going well. I have been speaking for so long. Am I okay? I mean, everything is going well?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am, you are
madam.
audible.
All
The
right.
presentation is over.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, as I was just talking about the globally competent graduates. So the graduates with a global communicative competence have an appreciation for different cultures around the world, and the cultural nuances and cultural differences and all. And they have this ability to understand and consider multiple perspectives. Now, this is very important. I mean, knowing how to speak in a second language properly, and of course knowing the world, and of course knowing the work doesn't only I mean only knowing the work doesn't work nowadays. You need to, of course, understand that a graduate nowadays, a person who is working at the workplace, has to also consider multiple perspectives to be successful in his or her work. So considering multiple perspectives, of course, is respecting others' perspectives as well. Like when we think about multiple perspectives, that means, of course, one very important thing can be done from different perspectives. But a person who doesn't have that grooming, a person who doesn't have that understanding that the same thing can be looked into from different perspectives, and every perspective can be positive, every perspective can be different even, but they can bring positive results. That is very, very important. Knowing that reality, that the same thing can be looked into from multiple perspectives and can be done, the same work, the same project, maybe, for example, the same project can be um, run in a different way, from looked into from a different perspective. Um, Again, looking into other skills, a globally competent learner has, critical and comparative thinking skills. So critical thinking skills is a very it has been quite a topic for discussion among the researchers, and of course educators, for quite a few years now. It's been around, I think, 10 to 15 years if we look at the literature review. That critical thinking skill is a very important skill for an individual, even for an individual, and it has to be incorporated. I mean, as promoted by the researchers, that it can be incorporated with second language teaching and learning. So I will talk a little bit more about critical thinking and learning, of course, some more. And of course, this has connection with reasoning and, of course, problem solving and all, which I will talk a little lot more, of course, later. So globally competent learner, and of course a globally competent graduate has critical thinking skills, and of course comparative thinking skills available. A globally competent graduate knows how to solve his or her problems, and this is an ability. I mean, solving a problem. I mean, of course, problems are a part of our life. We cannot ignore the fact. Given that, I mean, whenever we are at our workplace, we are there to solve problems, of course. So having that mindset and knowing how to how to cope up with the difficult situations and solve the problems adds a lot with the workplace, and it is a skill which is of course connected with the mindset, and of course it's also a skill nowadays. It's not only a mindset; it's also a skill. And then, of course, globally competent individuals are comfortable with ambiguity and change. So ambiguity again is a part of our work, and of course we all are subject to change, and everything is subject to change in this world. I mean, we cannot ignore this fact. So when we accept the reality of a workplace, and of course and when there are things, or there are concepts with ambiguity. I mean, whenever, for example, when we are thinking about situation where we're not sure, and where we think that everything is vague, accepting that reality that everything will not be as we think or as we want it to be, and it can change in I mean situations can change in a jiffy. So this is also an ability. And globally competent graduates, graduates and of course individuals understand the global significant issues. Just like, of course, they know the situation, the world economy. They know about the I mean, for example, the war situations, or they know about the global politics. They know about the global difficult issues like climate change and all. So, I mean, these are the basics of a globally competent individual, and more importantly, globally competent individuals are good thinkers. They are problem solvers, and they're not just test takers, as is mentioned. And if we look into the recent researches on this age, I mean, a particular area. Um, so I mean, if we really want our learners to be global citizens, and when we are, of course, involved with the teaching and learning process of second language, English as a second language especially, we need to understand that we need to turn our learners into global citizens. And for this reason, if we are teachers, if we are teaching, we need to also think like global citizens. And for that reason, to be global citizens, of course, we need to have global communicative competence. I mean, we need to be equipped with this particular um, skill. And of course, this is a disposition, and of course, knowledge and skill. It's a combination of all, as I just mentioned. So if we look into the, global competence matrix, as you can see, this is a combination or amalgamation of all these three. This is the global competence matrix promoted by worldsavvy.org. Um, so they mentioned that, as you can see, these are all interconnected. As you can see in the bubble, this is a connection with values and attitudes, behaviors and skills. So it's an amalgamation of all these three interconnecting with each other, and amalgamating all together. So let me just talk a little bit more in more detail about these three concepts. I haven't made anyone impatient or bored with my speech. Am I being clear enough? I mean, is everything fine?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just hope that I'm not um, continuously speaking and boring you all.
Not at
Okay,
all. Not at all.
okay, thank you
No,
so much.
ma'am.
We are
All
enjoying it, ma'am. We are
right,
enjoying
okay,
it.
thank you, Mr. Ravinder. Okay, so moving on, the global competence matrix. The first thing that is at the core of this global competence matrix is, of course, we want our future graduates to know about the world events and global issues, which are complex and interdependent with each other. That means, of course, as I was just talking about the world events, I mean, a graduate who is landing or who is going to land to the workplace, they know what is happening around him, around the world, and knows about the contemporary issues related to the world economy, or of course related to his or her subject or her particular area of work. And not only that, the person knows much more about the world related to the global issues. Um, a person, an individual who knows about his own culture. That means knowing our own culture is also very important. Sometimes we believe that knowing English as a second language, which is an individual who can speak really, really well, who can write really, really well in English, or who is really competent in English, is a globally competent, I mean, individual or a graduate. But that is not the case. A person with language linguistic knowledge but lacking the knowledge about his or her own culture and history lacks a lot in his workplace. So as an individual, we need to train our learners to know about their own culture and history, and these are interconnected. um, Azan is going on. Should I take a 2 minutes break? Is that okay with you all?
Sure, ma'am.
Okay, I'll just take 2 minutes break. After the Azan finishes, I'll start. Thank you for your patience. All right, so the Azan is over. So let me start again. Am I audible properly?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
All right, thank you so much.
Excuse me, ma'am. Sorry for the interruption. I ask all the participants to please mute your videos other than the presenter. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
So moving ahead, so it is nowadays, in some cases, the young stars actually believe that they don't need to know about their own culture, and they're not. In some cases, the young stars are not interested in knowing their own history. But it is, nowadays being pointed out by the researchers that if we want an individual to be globally communicative, globally communicative and competent enough, they need to know about their own culture really, really well, where they can represent, so that they can represent themselves to the world, and they can connect well, and they can actually, of course, if you know about your own culture, if you know about your own history, you can actually think about someone else's culture, and you can empathize. Otherwise you cannot empathize, of course. So it's a two-way process. When we know about our own culture, and we respect our own culture, and we know about our own history, of course we can connect with others cultures and histories, and we can actually start respecting others, culture, and of course history. Oh, and which is a very important part of becoming globally competent. So once knowing one's own culture and history is key to understanding one's relationship to others as well. So if we, of course, would like to empathize with others, if we really would like to develop our own work relationship with others, we need to respect others' cultures as well. Who are people are coming from different cultures, and of course we need to know how we can connect with them. So, and of course, multiple conditions fundamentally affect diverse global forces, events, conditions, and issues. So, of course, having knowledge and of course getting connected to the knowledge actively, these all actually contribute to becoming an individual who actually can cope up with the newly developed situations in the post-COVID world, where we need to be informed, well informed about the rest of the world, well informed about what is happening around us. We need to be well informed about each and every area of knowledge. Where I mean, it's not like we need to know in depth, but at least a basic understanding is required, so that we can actually be global audiences and global citizens in the real sense of the term, or the true sense of the term. So also the current world system is, we should understand, and we should make our, I mean, as teachers, we should also understand that our the world we are living in now, I mean, the current world system is shaped by historical forces. Without history, we are nothing. Without thinking about and knowing about the history, of course, we cannot know where we come from and how we are, I mean, how we have created or built this world, or how our past generations actually have created this world that we are living in now. So as teachers also, and also, I mean, of course, when we're teaching our youngsters, um, and of course, if we're teaching a second language, we shouldn't forget that, they need to be, I mean, we need to aware our learners with historical sources. So these are the core concepts of global competence matrix. Moving ahead with the skills, of course, you will get a lot of connections as I just talked about skills. The skills, in the skills for being globally competent, I talked about it, but of course there are a lot more in here. So as the matrix by worldsavvy.org says, um, an individual with global competence matrix global competence knows how to investigate the world by framing different questions. I mean, how to ask questions, analyzing ability of and analyzing and synthesizing reality relevant evidence, and drawing reasonable conclusions that lead to further inquiry. So, I mean, of course, this is a very important skill in the workplace. I mean, of course, an individual who knows how to, I mean, of course, solving a problem requires framing proper questions or investigating in a proper manner, analyzing the situation. If we are working on a project, if we are working on a particular issue in the workplace, any kind of thing, any kind of work needs analyzing, and of course, coming into conclusion, synthesizing, the ability to synthesize, and particularly coming into proper conclusions is very important at the workplace. So a globally competent graduate will know how to ask questions, frame questions properly, analyze and synthesize the taking into consideration the proper evidences and coming into proper conclusions. And finally, they can move ahead with the future prospect of a particular issue. An individual with global competence recognizes, articulates, and applies an understanding of different perspectives. So, of course, I mean, as I just mentioned, that the same job can be done, the same assignment can be done in different ways. So the individuals need to respect the different perspectives, multiple perspectives, and how to articulate different understanding, I mean, an understanding of different perspectives, and how to apply their knowledge in the same thing from different perspectives. That is also a skill for the future graduates. Next is selecting and applying appropriate tools and strategies to communicate and collaborate effectively. So knowing a language is not only, I mean, knowing the second language is not English as a second language in most cases, as we consider. Knowing English doesn't mean that you are globally competent. And if we just can connect to someone and cannot communicate properly, that doesn't work in the workplace. So we need to make sure that we are awareing our learners to become globally competent learners by knowing how to select and apply appropriate tools at their workplace, what to choose and what not to choose, which way to go and which way not to go, to have that analytical ability and be strategic to communicate and collaborate. I mean, collaboration is very important in the present world. I mean, whenever we think about any particular project, be that a research project, be that um, any kind of project, it can be any kind of project in any area of work. Collaboration means a lot. Collaboration is, in a way, everything nowadays, because without collaboration, of course, we cannot move ahead and excel. And so communication is important, of course, when we are teaching our learners English as a second language. We need to, of course, teach them how to communicate, but also we need to teach them how to be strategic in communication. What are the strategies that make you successful in the workplace? How to collaborate effectively for a joint project, for a joint activity. That is also very important. Globally competent graduate listens actively. So active listening is a very important skill. In this part of the world, there has been this notion that people don't want to listen in our part of the world, but I really don't believe that this is the reality now. Our youngsters are changing, our new generations are changing, and we now love to listen to people actively. Now, active listening is very important in the workplace, and we need to make sure that we teach our learners that they become active listeners and engage in productive dialogues. When they speak, when they communicate, then they are well informed, and they are they are good listeners. Of course, another what the matrix says, that another skill is that being fluent. In the 21st century in the digital technology is one very important, of course, part of the global competence. I mean, given the situation we are in now, of course, and during the pandemic, we could realize really, really well how crucial it is to be digitally competent. I mean, to be competent in digital technology. And we all have been talking about this issue during the pandemic. When pandemic was going on, we gave a lot of talk about how we can promote online education and knowing about digital platforms and using the digital platforms for teaching, for learning. So there is no question that a global competent individual who is a graduate will have to be fluent in the digital technology. Um, a person with global competence also demonstrates resiliency in new situations. Of course, we just had COVID, and it was a very new situation to us. We never know how many new situations we might have to go through and, of course, move ahead with. So we need to really be aware, and we need to be aware of the fact that given the new conditions, how we can cope up and how we can keep our cool to cater to the new conditions, and how we can um, positively contribute. That is very important. Positively contributing to the newer situations is a very important skill for a global competent graduate. A graduate who just only uses existing knowledge and cannot take newer steps, or innovative steps during a new condition doesn't really work in the real world now. A globally competent learner applies critical, comparative, and creative thinking and problem-solving skills. So, just knowing and learning about the critical thinking and knowing about the skills doesn't really work well. We need to apply apply certain strategies when we are planning our materials, when we are planning our of course, um, sessions for the second language learners. We need to use such kind of materials and such kind of project works, such kind of skills based approach where the students or the learners can be critically involved, where they can think, where they can connect, where they can be comparative about situations, where they can be creative thinkers and problem solvers. For example, I mean, when we are teaching a second language to our learners, I mean, English as a second language, we can always take materials, maybe, for example, materials which are connected. If, so suppose if I talk about a project, if we take a project where we give our learners a project that they go to the, just, may I be excused for a second, maybe for a minute? I'll just take a minute. Oh, okay. Is that okay? Just a moment. All right, sorry. I'm really sorry for the difficulty. All right, am I clear now? Yeah. Should I move ahead?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Um, so as I was just talking about, critically thinking critically. For example, if we involve our learners in a project where they work on, suppose, the climate change issues in different part of the world, and we gave them food for thought, and so that they can apply their strategies and ask them to think about and plan different projects on I suppose, global warming or maybe climate change, and they can present with their own understanding, and they can present with their own, I mean, of course, ideas, for example, and they are given small projects where they can speak their mind, where they can think from their innovation, and they can innovate. So, I mean, in incorporating all these ideas into teaching and learning of second language actually contributes a lot. I mean, in training them to become globally competent learners. I mean, when we are thinking about proficiency in a second language or maybe even a foreign language, this can be applied as well. So, moving ahead, the next thing that the global competence matrix says is the behaviors. So a globally competent learner seeks out, implies an understanding of different perspectives of problem solving and decision making, as I was just talking about. So behavior is very important. I mean, how we behave in the workplace and how we groom our learners to behave in the workplace is very important. So when we are turning our learners into global citizens and, of course, global graduates, we need to make them learn how to seek out and apply different perspectives to the problem solving situation and decision making. So if we put our learners, second language learners, in certain situations where they actually can um, connect and take their own decisions in small directions, maybe even in their own small projects, in for example, in small projects on writing or maybe presenting, where they can apply their speaking skill and of course listening skill, and involving different kind of materials into teaching and learning, that actually contributes a lot. And this is how we can incorporate these behaviors into the mindset of the learners so that they can become international graduates. Um, and a globally competent learner also knows how to form opinions based on exploration and evidence, not by notion. So, of course, a globally competent graduate, I mean, knows how to think beyond go beyond what they know, what they really have learned. So we need to make our learners inquisitive so that they want to learn more, they want to explore more, and they believe in exploring and taking evidence so that they can form newer they can take newer decisions, or they can form newer opinions. So a globally competent learner in a way will be open to the world, open to the world, so that they can welcome ideas coming from different parts of the world. So we need to make our learners feel free to explore and feel free to connect to the world. So we can take, for example, we can take, like if we are thinking about second language teaching and learning, we can give our learners projects based on the geographical considerations of different parts of the world, taking in different, for example, maybe we can give them presentations where they present different islands around the world, or maybe they can choose or pick any particular geographical consideration of a particular country maybe, and they can connect. So going beyond and exploring and knowing about the world, connecting to the world, it actually means a lot for the learners, where we should not always go to the traditional sort of materials which have been designed and found in the books only, and very limited. It can, I mean, of course, the as the teachers and educators, we can go beyond all these, and we can think in a different way, where we can design our classes or sessions, where we can actually design projects for our students, where we can take a project-based approach, where skills approach can be incorporated as well, so that we can finally make the learners think in a different way, explore the world, and they can take decisions. So, I mean, there are certain ways we can explore, and we can make the students explore the world and learn more. So moving ahead, the next behaviors, as you can see in here, I mean, required in the, sorry, okay, required as mentioned in the matrix of global competence, is that an individual with a global competence adapts shared responsibility and takes cooperative action, which is very important. I mean, sharing responsibility and coming into taking cooperative actions altogether to make a project really worthy is very important for an individual. And learning how to act properly in a cooperative situation, or in a group, this is very important. So of course, group work is a very important approach, as has been mentioned also in the previous researches in second language acquisition. So we can adapt, of course, all these researches and outcomes of researches and theories, but also we can, taking in all those approaches, of course we can incorporate global competence matrix in this particular in those particular framework of teaching and learning. A globally competent learner also knows how to translate ideas, concerns, and findings into appropriate and responsible individual or collaborative actions to improve conditions. So, I mean, of course, translating the ideas into our own conditions, and of course, according to our own needs, is very important. So we need to teach our learners how to translate ideas for their own good. So we can put our learners in small problems and design certain activities for our learners so that they have to get involved. For example, we can put our learners with opinion-based projects, or opinion-based skills approach. We can, of course, incorporate. It can be an integrated approach. So, for example, we can put our learners into writing a report on maybe the culture of Amazon and the tribes over there. So we can ask for their their opinion about the tribal culture. So of course, we can incorporate a lot in the second language, in teaching English as a second language. And of course, we can create an environment for the learners where they can behave and learn all these behaviors required to be globally competent. So I hope I'm not running out of time. How much time do I have left? Am I running out of time?
No, ma'am, you can take your time.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much. All right. And then a global communicative competent, learner and graduate, they actually commit to the process of continuous learning and reflection. Now, this is very, very important for the future graduates around the world. I mean, of course, be lifelong learners and learning as thinking of learning as a continuous process, thinking of learning as a process of reflection and getting something new out of the experiences. This is very, very important for the future graduates. And so when we are teaching our youngsters, of course, we need to understand that we need to groom the learners into this particular process. And they have to go through this, they can go through certain um, um, certain teaching strategies, or maybe we can take certain strategies where we can put these learners into situations where they know and understand that learning is not something which stops. Rather, it's a continuous process, and they need to reflect on what they have learned. So maybe after each particular session, we can we can provide the students certain ideas for reflecting in and using the second language for doing that. This is very, very important. So we can make them learn how to reflect. As teachers, we can make them learn how to reflect on ideas that are existing and think and formulate their own opinions and newer opinions even. So in brief, these are the skills and values and attitudes and behaviors that are mentioned in the matrix of global competence, as as I just, tried to cover. So moving ahead is how, exploring the global competence. If we think about that, what do we want our individuals, I mean, uh, who we want them to be, who we want to be globally competent? What do we want them to do? We want the individuals to investigate the world beyond one's own immediate environment, framing significant problems and conducting well crafted and age appropriate research. In any kind of work, the individual is involved in, that doesn't matter. But of course, they need to know how to conduct a really appropriate research related to their work, recognizing perspectives, others, and owns one's own, as I just talked about the multiple perspectives, while articulating and explaining such perspectives thoughtfully and respectfully, communicate ideas effectively with diverse audiences, bridging geographic, as I just mentioned, the geographic, linguistic, ideological, and cultural barriers. Wherever we are, from whichever perspective we're looking into, we need to learn how to empathize and how to respect others' culture and break all the boundaries so that we can become global citizens in the real sense of the term. Taking action to improve conditions, viewing oneself as a player in the world, and participating reflectively. That is very, very important for the future graduates as we're looking into the world as one unit, not as a divided unit. So we want our future graduates to not only know about the world, but also be active in taking actions and taking the world further. So, of course, we need to make our learners aware that knowing English as a second language doesn't only work. Rather, you need to be a global player where you actually can contribute in the real sense of the term from wherever you are, from whichever workplace you are working in right now. So, if we think about integrating, I actually tried to talk a little bit about how we can actually connect this particular um, competence, global communicative competence in the teaching and learning of the second language. Especially I was talking about English as a second language. It can go for other languages as well. So as I just was talking about, there can be integrated approach of course, we can take skills-based approach. We can think about the writing projects. We can think about the listening. I mean, presentations based on different issues relating to linguistic issues or geographical issues connected to historical issues. I mean, we can actually take in different materials based on anything and everything around the world, and we can go for skills-based approach. It can be writing assignment as well. It can be writing project or speaking project, or maybe the students can be can turn video essays. They can, I mean, they can make video essays on different issues, or maybe the students can be can be allowed to um, uh, create their own projects, which would be focusing on reading maybe. So we can give the students their reading assignments based on different materials and all. So it's about the approach actually. I mean, as I was just talking about, it's about the approach, and of course um, applying it in a different way will create the difference. So, I mean, as teachers, educators, we can think about different approaches, but applying it in a very different way where we can incorporate global communicative competence through our through a proper planning, and of course a proper understanding of this concept, and of course integrating this particular competence into the system is very, very important, as has been found in the recent researches, and as I would like to also argue. And I think this will create a difference, a whole lot of difference in the future world, if we can really make our learners globally competent. So I think that should be all from me. And thank you so much for listening to me with so much of patience. And I really hope you enjoyed my session, and I could create a difference. I could make a little bit of difference in our thoughts. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I would really, really congratulate and thank the organizers of this wonderful online workshop, and inviting me here as a guest speaker. And I would really appreciate future invitations as well. Thank you so much. That would be all.
Thank you too.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, and your magnificent presentation. I'm awestruck with that, and the way you carried the presentation step by step about the concept gave a vivid picture that most of us are not familiar with. So, and it was also a huge set of information that we gathered from you today. So, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for, giving us. Thank you so much for giving us so much information. So, I think it is the time for the audience to interact with you. So I'd like the
Sure.
participants to ask questions and you can interact with the speaker.
So I have a question.
Sure, Mr. Sharon. Yes.
Yeah. So in the wake of what you have been talking is English. In the wake of the rise of China, Chinese and Arabic languages, does second language English learning have any effect? Or you said the global playing is English not enough, as you said. Along with that, do we need Chinese and other languages also? That's my question, basically.
Okay, if I could understand your question, what would you like to ask? I mean, are you asking that is English enough or not,
Yeah,
or
because
there are more?
yeah, you know,
Okay,
as you
I
said,
think
English is not second language. English is not enough to be a global player. So, is Chinese presenting any kind of or German languages, are they presenting any kind of challenges to English, the growth of English? Uh, is English language growth in any case become more vulnerable, uh, especially in business world?
okay. Yes, I think I received your question really well.
Thank
Um,
you.
of course, one thing is, yes, of course, it's a pleasure to answer this wonderful question. I mean, one thing is, I think, very important to understand is that everything is changeable in this world. Nothing is static. And if we think about the position of English, I don't think that English is going to hold the position forever and ever, and we cannot expect that as well. So, of course, China has been, I mean, taking over, and it has been said by the researchers now that maybe after 30 years, maybe we can start thinking of English as a second language. Chinese as a second language, and start teaching Chinese to our future graduates. So the world we are in now, of course, English has been spreading for so many hundreds of years, and there has been so many situations, of course, because due to the imperialistic situations, and of course imperialism, and of course there are other I mean positivities of using English as a lingua franca in different conditions, of course, has promoted English as a second language around the world. It is There is no doubt about it. But of course, the world is changing, and you never know when. Of course, we land in a different arena, and when we need a different second language. Apart from English. So that's, I think, my answer.
Yeah, thank you for the answer. In fact, I asked that question in the backdrop of India also. Recently, we have a Kannada actor saying that Hindi is no more a national language, and all these things. When in a multicultural society like India, even English cannot hold sway for a long time. Probably Hindi is also posing a challenge. I feel so. Just as in the
Exactly.
world, yeah, that's
Right, right. Of course. I think. Of course, even since as I have been thinking about India, of course, English is not. It's not sufficient. It's not only. It's not only the only. So, of course, in your part of the world, in India, of course, we cannot expect everyone to communicate using English as a second language, and of course, Hindi also cannot suffice. So you never know. Maybe we can have another language in India. In near future, we never know, right?
thank you. Thank you, man. Thank you.
Okay, you're most welcome, sir. Thank you for the question.
Yes, any other questions? You can raise your questions, please.
I can see Runu Ravi has raised hand, but I cannot hear you.